Well, it's morning. You might have gathered. Our hotel, pension, albergues, restaurant is one of the few that opens at 6 o'clock. So everybody's been gathered around there. We've had cake. They did. You'd have toast with tomato or toast and jam with bread was the official breakfast. But they had these big chunks of cake, chocolate cake. So we've had those and 2 cups of coffee. And now we're about to set off. It's 5 to 7. Let's pick up backpacks and everything before we set off. And then we're probably going to do the route to Sarria that goes via Samos, because I know that many people think that particularly the section from Samos to Sarria is one of their favourite sections of the whole Camino. Speaking to people last night, they were saying most people seem to be doing the shorter route. I know some people are going beyond Sarria as well. So that makes sense to do the shorter route then. Also at Samos there's a monastery which I gather some people have been there in the past and it's been closed. And they do tours of it which take about an hour and a half if you want to do that. But people speak of it as particularly beautiful and surprisingly stunning. You don't expect to suddenly come across it. And then that walk from there to Sarria is particularly fine, apparently. So it's also slightly different in terms of the elevation. If you do the shorter walk, you have quite a hill to begin with. This is just looking at the maps. Whereas the Samos day, it's more varied constantly with a gradual sort of downward incline during the day, but with little ups and downs along the way. So we're going to do that. It's about 25 kilometres, so what's that, 15.5 miles? We're walking behind Terry and Bernie, who are also from the UK. No doubt we'll speak to them soon. I think they're doing our route today. They were saying they've done this section before and last time went through Samos and really enjoyed it. But they've never actually been into the monastery there. We're going off to Samos this time. You've seen the monastery at Samos before, haven't you?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, it's worth a visit, to be honest.
Yeah.
Definitely worth a visit.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do. Enjoy the shorter route. Well, that was Terry and Bernie, who are also from the UK, from England. We've talked to them quite a bit from the second day, well, our first day of walking. We met them near Belorado, shortly outside of Belorado. And we've taken slightly different rest days, but we've ended up meeting up with them again. They've done this section before, but they hadn't done the first part. And they were thinking last night they'd do this route that we're doing again, which takes you through Samos. Well, there's the monastery that I mentioned earlier, but they've decided to do the shorter route today instead, I suppose because they haven't seen it before, so it makes sense. The shorter route, I did mean to say earlier on, is supposed to be equally magnificent in terms of the landscape that you pass through. So I think it's for each person to decide what they want to do, really. The other family that we saw, who are also from the UK, live in the Isle of Wight, and they have a business selling crafts, not just crafts, rather ceramics that they make themselves, lots for gardens and so on. And they've been doing it as a family, and the daughter is working, sort of stopping on certain days, working from her laptop, making sure she's got a Wi-Fi connection, and then kind of catching up with them. And they're sort of running their business while they go. They've got people, I think, that they're in touch with, but a lot of it is online. And they're absolutely loving it. And the gentleman, Steve, just seems never to tire. He kind of, like, there was one day when he'd taken the wrong route and ended up doing 44 kilometres and looked absolutely dead on his feet, but was absolutely loving it and just carries on. And we keep bumping into them. So, but there haven't been many English people that we've encountered while we've been walking. So, sorry to not see them. They've stopped off for breakfast now, and I think they're probably going to do the shorter route, and then they're staying on the far side of Sarria. So, yeah, but maybe we'll bump into them in future when we come back next year or something, because they're thinking they're going to keep doing it year after year. Doesn't it look like the perfect cave entrance? You know, the type that you imagine inside there's a mountain king living in there. That's the way, and it's guarded by trolls. And maybe a goblin. Now, there are noticeably fewer pilgrims on this route, I think, than the shorter route. But there are the odd one or two. In addition to ourselves. Albergue. Where's that? 21 kilometres away. That's a long way. All the sheepskin. There's such a quiet village, which in many ways seems abandoned. They have quite a large cemetery and much of it seems quite new. Some of them say on them the family names, others say the house. So that says that you take the left fork here to get to the Albergue de Peregrinos, which this is quite a remote location. I think that probably, I don't know that that's open. Maybe people still pass through there. I think if you were planning on going there, you'd need to be pretty sure that's definitely going to be open. The traffic sounds so close, and it's actually right on the other side of the valley. So we're coming into what I believe is the village of Renche, I suppose. It's harder to know walking this route because I quite often use the Godesalco website, and it doesn't really list the stops along this route. It lists the others instead. And Buen Camino app, for all it's great, and also the White Pilgrim app, when you look at towns, you don't really see the name of the town because you see all of the sort of pins for the different albergues and information, and it kind of obscures the name a little. And the thing I like about the Godesalco website is that it shows you the distance between the places. So if you press a button for, say, Samos, it will show you all the distances from there to, well, in theory it would, from Samos, but it doesn't show this route in detail. But let's say from Triacastela for the other route, it would show you the distance to each of the villages on the route. And then you could press the button for each of those villages and it would show you the remaining distance. I find that really useful. It's godesalco.com. Well, the forecast for today is for good hot weather. So Andrew is now taking off the bottom of his trousers so that, because he has the convertible type, they turn into shorts. We'll be going down here toward Lastres. I don't know how far it is to Lastres, because that isn't in any of my apps or the website that I use. I had a brainwave. I started using a thing called a map instead of an app. A map. Basically just Google Maps, and obviously you can see the sorts of distances between places that look like they're going to be reasonably sized towns. Not necessarily kind of official villages along the way, but towns or villages, you can see them. So I could then tell that Lastres was basically just like a few hundred yards down the street. There are a couple more little villages coming up like this too. I won't be able to tell really from that whether there's likely to be anywhere open and kind of catering to pilgrims in the morning. Not that we really need that yet anyway. But you can see if there's a cafe a lot of the time. Google Maps, there's a thought. I have been using that occasionally on and off actually. I am joking slightly. Anyway, we've got a few more pilgrims behind us. We were just talking to a couple from Australia. They started in Leon and they just had 2 nights to recover from the trip and then started walking. And I think he's doing a kind of blog, video blog, but Instagram initially, called 280s. So he's got a little deep camera on a stick. And she showed me some of the photos on his Instagram. I thought they were actually quite good. So is it just me, or does that look like a sleeping dragon? That roof. So other things. Smell of wood smoke here. Smell of various plants that I still don't know what they are. But there's one, I think, combined with the wood smoke. Again, it's a sort of slight hint of fox, but herbs as well. I don't know what that would be. I'm so glad we're doing this route today. It's quiet. There are all these sort of hidden, magical little sections going between the woods. The villages seem almost forgotten, but actually quite well kept. Some of them, this one for example. It's just magical. It's hard to believe that this is going to be our last day of this section. And it's sad, but I'm kind of not dwelling on it. I am thinking about what to do next, other than to return here, of course. Just looking at this sort of thing behind me. You see, that's actually somebody's garage. They've got their car in there. But it's just so quirky. What to do next and how to incorporate this into my own normal life at home, which to some extent is impossible, really. I've noticed that normally when I'm at home, I seem to dream about travelling, being in a different place every night. And now that I'm here, sorry, I know some people find talk of dreams slightly tedious, but I think it's relevant. Now I'm here, I've been dreaming about home more. But also tents. Maybe I need to be sleeping in a tent more. But I think it's a question that a lot of people here have on their minds because, and for example, that English family thinking about coming back, the way they're doing it, working while they're here, you know, maybe more things are possible than we realise with a bit of imagination. So I don't know. Just walking each day and feeling a part of the world around us rather than shut away from it. It's an important thing, I suppose. Little cottage in the woods, and there's a stream here somewhere. We can hear it, but we can't see it. Oh, the water boatman. Well, that was unexpected. Was the village before last. Big junction here. And San Martino do Real was the church that we just passed. "129 kilometres, 811 metres left to go." We've gone from much green to suddenly lots of blue as well as green. Misty as well. There seems to be disagreement about when the tour is. The Australian couple are running down the hill to try and get there because they've been told that there's a tour at 10 o'clock. It's now 5 to 10. We were told that the tour is at 11 o'clock, but by some people who've never managed to do the tour. So And I'm not sure that we want to do the tour necessarily today, I think, because it's our last day. We're just enjoying walking. Sort of want to just be in the presence of the monastery, not necessarily walk around in a group, learning about the history of it, which probably sounds... I am interested in everything. Maybe we'll come back and do that at some point. I do love the banners there up. It's planting the flags. We've stopped at this cafe. We're waiting for tomato tostada. We've got a nice view of, there's a car, obviously. We've got a nice view across to the monastery. Well, we are not going in the monastery. We're not even really able to go around the monastery because you have to do the guided tour. I spoke briefly with the man in the shop. You have to take your backpack off to go in the shop. And he was saying, basically there's nothing until midday, but there is obviously a tour at 11. So I think maybe if we waited until noon, we'd be able to access something else, like maybe there's a mass or something. We're just a bit concerned because we've got to get the train later. We don't really want to be too rushed, so we're kind of wanting to move on with the walk. It does, to me, seem a bit strange to have come to such a fantastic monastery and then not go in, though. Maybe we'll come back and do it someday. We've sort of agreed, and I think because Andrew's finding things a bit difficult today as well and doesn't want to go. The thing with guided tours is quite often you're sort of standing, and if you're a bit foot weary, it can be hard. So we've agreed we're going to go into a church along the way. And this will be a fateful trip into a church as a sort of penance for not going into the monastery. I can't believe we're here at such a fantastic building and we're not going into it, really. But I think it's probably so huge, it would be like going around a palace in the middle of a 15.5-mile walk when you have to get a train at the end of it and make sure that you're there on time. So it's sensible, really. And maybe it's meant to be. One day we'll come back, perhaps. Andrew's just pointing out another thing as well, that the guided tours here are in Spanish, so I understand a reasonable amount of Spanish. Andrew doesn't understand any. But the couple from Australia, they don't speak any Spanish, but they actually found it really quite pleasant. Or interesting rather, because they said the scale of the rooms inside is just incredible. You think it's big and then you go into another room and it's even bigger, and then you go somewhere else and it's even bigger again. So anyway, it is what it is. We've seen lots of buildings while we've been here. Kind of wish we were going in ready. the allotments seem to be much more in evidence since we entered Galicia. I feel a slightly opinionated piece coming on. So, I live next to a large field in a rural area which is largely agricultural and flat. And repeatedly, I'm just going past some people. Hola.
Hola.
Repeatedly in the fields next to where we live, they plant grass, and they've been doing this for probably the best part of 10 years. They used to plant food, crops and so on. Here you have fields and they're dividing them up and they're growing vegetables of different types, some grains, and they're not just allotments, you know, it's throughout. Obviously we've gone through huge areas where they're growing grains or vegetables of various types, very little, just grass. And I think it's largely because we have farmers who are wanting to sell the land and they want to prove that it's not very good agricultural land so that it seems less valuable. And it's easier to sell it to property developers, I think, because of that. But the result of it is that unlike Spain and the UK, we're not growing our own food. And we're shipping a lot of it in, which we shouldn't be. There are ways of providing housing for people, which is probably necessary. I'm not saying it isn't. But building housing in a sustainable way that actually addresses people's needs without planting our... Because we don't have the massive amounts of space that they have in Spain. I mean, it's a much larger country with much greater sections of arable land. And they've done a tremendous job with irrigation here as well. We don't have that sort of space in the UK, which is part of the problem. Obviously, we're providing housing because we have a dense population. See, I'm passing more now. They're growing food. We need to grow food. This is basic. It will come to a head, I think, in the UK. We've really messed it up. And every year, the farmer that we live next to adds more plastic-covered hay bales to his pile of hay bales. And that's all he does. And she. I think there were two. Why would we do that? Why would you take a whole field and just grow nothing but hay, essentially, and do nothing with the hay? It's wrong. Anyway, rant over. There are some very, very nice hotels in Samos. And the river, which is full of fish, and I believe also eels. We've seen the fish but not the eels. It's just down there at the bottom. Beautiful area. Not surprised the Spanish come here. I think this alternative route, I mean, I don't know what the other one is like today, the shorter one. It's not particularly demanding. We haven't had steep uphills or anything like that, really. You know, little ones, but nothing too major. It's absolutely beautiful. I mean, the monastery, it's not just about the monastery, it's about the position of it, it's about the river around it. It's hidden away in this green little valley. It's just very, very worth seeing. Well, that is not in agreement with the other signs, which now say less than 130 kilometres to go. That says 142 kilometres. And we are definitely walking in the right direction. Maybe the stone was originally made for somewhere else and they liked it too much. Or maybe it's that far if you take various detours along the way. So that part we just walked, a lot of it is by the river, as you saw, and then you have small sections where the Camino is sectioned off from the road by kind of, the path has the wooden fencing to one side of it. It's quite nice. Anyway, here is where you turn off if you're a foot pilgrim. Cyclists tend to continue on down there. I think they've got quite a good run. Nice big downhill for them in sections. And we go off here. It's all very sort of economically more affluent, I think, around here. Certainly compared with some of the largely abandoned villages we were going through earlier on. Again, there was some disagreement over that section between the Wise Pilgrim app and the Buen Camino app. Wise Pilgrim would have us coming off slightly further back, and then you sort of go slow, or fly in my eye. I keep having insects flying at me. I've had a bee, I've had a large beetle, I've had a butterfly, more beetles. Not actually a fly, really, not a large one until just... Anyway, I digress. The Buen Camino app has us going up here, which is slightly more direct, and then we'll connect up with the route that Wise Pilgrim was suggesting further along here. But it looked as though Wise Pilgrim would take you through a couple of little hamlets. But I kind of... Because there wasn't... Normally there's a note on the Buen Camino app which says, like, this is where there are alternative paths, this path is this path is this. That wasn't there, there was just no note at all, so I thought I'll check the other app. And it sort of made me panic for a moment because it looked as though we'd gone past the turn-off. But we haven't. So here we are. And there are obviously signs for this being the official Camino. So I see there's this fence here where people have put boxes. According to this, basically 125.4. That looks like a new EVA Birkenstock, Arizona, the same as mine. I guess it must have fallen off somebody's backpack and they'll be missing it. I hope they managed to find a suitable way of dealing with that. I wasn't too sure what to do about that sandal actually. I went back and had a look at it because I was thinking, if it is quite a new looking sandal and somebody's lost one off their backpack, because a lot of people just carry them on the back of their packs, the best thing to do, and what some people do, is to carry it on and you might see the person and you can give it to them. So I thought maybe we should do that. So I went back and looked at it, but when I lifted it up, there was quite a happy looking spider under it. So I thought maybe it's been here a while and I'm just picking up an old sandal, even though it did look in good condition. So I have left it there. Yeah, but I think if there hadn't been a spider there, maybe I would have carried it along a bit. I don't mind spiders, but I think it might have been its home in the middle of a road. Anyway, it's still there. That bird up ahead has something in its mouth. And it's been desperately trying to get away from us. It's just a female blackbird. I think it's got a nut. And she just flew right past us. She sort of doubled back. I thought, right, I'm going for it. She obviously wanted to come back this way. We've done quite a bit of sort of climbing up on the other side of this. I suppose we're on the side of a valley now. Climbed quite high. And now it's flattened out, and we've had some sections where we've been going down as well. Well, there's a pilgrim ahead and we haven't seen one for a long time. So I was wondering why people talk about this section being their favourite of the whole Camino. And I can sort of see why. I don't know that necessarily so far I would say it was my favourite part of all. But it's not too strenuous in any way. You've got some ups, you've got some downs. Each of them is just about the right amount. You know, you don't feel, just as you're starting to get at all out of breath, it stops and you level out and you go down. But it's shaded, so in the heat it's bearable. It's beautiful. You're following the Rio Sarria, the River Sarria, for a lot of the way. That area where the monastery is, I don't know whether you could quite tell, but it's sort of at the end of a valley and it's surrounded by forested mountainsides or hillsides. And there are fish in the river, it just feels alive. And these little tracks, they feel magical. You know, there's all this mythology about witches and fairies and creatures of the woods, and you can see it because the woodland's very, very much a part of it, and it feels quite secret. And you've got sort of rocky little outcrops, and it's really, really lovely, and it's quite quiet. So I'm really glad we did it, and I can see why people might say that they particularly love this section because it feels special. It doesn't feel overly taxing. It's longer. I don't know what, as I said, I don't know what the other route is like. But so far it just doesn't feel too much of anything, and it is really, really lovely. And parts of it are spectacular, particularly by the monastery, I think. So, and I imagine also once you get into Sarria, of course, it then becomes very, very busy. We've got about 5 kilometres, just looking on the maps, and looking at wise pilgrims' distances as well. About 5 kilometres before we meet the main Camino that people have been doing, which is the shorter route. And then we'll do the same route into Sarria with them. So 5 more kilometres of peace and countryside, and it does feel quite English in a way, but English countryside in the best possible way, and with occasional little Spanish scenes. I also want to clarify that when I mentioned it being very English scenes, I don't mean in any way to minimise the Spanish aspect. What I'm thinking about is, we got people coming up. Buenos días. Maybe moments like that. I'm talking about the amount of time, basically, that you can be sort of lost. Buen camino. Perfect timing. You can be lost in a reverie that starts to feel almost English, because we're walking through large amounts of countryside with not many people around and not much in the way of architecture. It's largely vegetation today. But then you come across something which is evidently Spanish, and it can be quite fleeting. So like that Buen Camino with the cyclists going past, you're reminded that you're in Spain, and other things remind you of it. Occasionally the vegetation is different, or the architecture, the warmth. It's actually a kind of slightly humid warmth. We do get that sort of warmth in the hottest days in the UK. Not very often. And don't get me started on the fact that they actually grow vegetables in their fields. We think that it's a field of maize. At this stage, they look like very, very wimpy leeks. I don't think they're leeks. I think it's maize. Andrew will tell us. Although I have to say, we have found that sometimes his app is not actually accurate. You have to make sure you've got a really good photograph and that you do compare. It's the picture of this app, by the way. That you do really closely compare the photo that you've taken with the result. We've taken a few pictures and found a few plants that we photographed from different angles and got different results each time. Well, you'll be amazed to know that it was indeed maize. When I think about the word bliss, I think of this sort of temperature. This sort of breeze, just a hint of a breeze, but not much. This sort of what's the word? I guess this sort of countryside is part of the idea of it. Nothing too extreme, but beautiful, comfortable, everything easy. Prettiness. Knowing that you're lucky. It's a very big tree up ahead, and unlike the chestnut yesterday, probably not a famous one, but it's sprouted small trunks from the main old trunk. The people ahead are the people that took our photograph yesterday when we were coming down the hill. They appeared and offered to, the lady, just at the right moment by a viewpoint. And this place on the left looks really interesting. It's got all sorts of things hanging up, little tents and things. I thought it was an actual cow and it's a cardboard cutout. We're thinking we might go in here. They've got lots of goods hanging up. It's a little haven. Tortilla, caldo gallego, which is the soup. Tarta Santiago, which is the dessert. Zumo natural, café. Agua del día. A very startled looking owl there. A Fonte das Bodas. Oh, this is a wonderful, slightly quirky, very homely place. There's a lady in there doing all the cooking in the kitchen herself, and she brings you the things that you've ordered and hands them to you. You sort of wait in the entranceway. We've got lovely home-cooked Galician soup. There's quite a gathering of people. The two gentlemen there who I think are doing it by bike, I'm not entirely sure though, and they were telling us it's only 6 kilometres into Sarria from here. Tonight they intend to take the bus from Sarria back to Triacastela and do the other route into Sarria, but probably then stay on the far side of Sarria because they don't want to stay in Sarria itself. I think a lot of people are doing that. There's a lovely donkey. That was a very special place. When we come back and do the next section, I like the idea of somehow getting myself here and starting here, maybe. It was just so special sitting outside, and it's a quirky garden and everything's home cooked. But the lady herself, when I went to pay, I haven't told Andrew this yet, when I went to pay, she started telling me that with the credencial that you've got to get 2 stamps every day from now on. And I said to her, actually, we're finishing today. It's the longest to get off work, and Andrew could get off work, and we have to return to do the last stage next year. And I said, it's sad for me today. And she sort of took both of my hands and she said, oh, don't be sad. And she gave me this stone. And then she sort of went away and we talked a little bit more. Or she went away to stamp my credencial. She was still talking to me. And yeah, I was saying, you know, it's important to me, and I really appreciated what she was saying, and she was giving me more advice. And, you know, I was saying I'll carry within me the experience I've had. So, you know, I do understand it's not just a sad thing, it's something that continues. And then she took my hands again and gave me this bracelet with the little Camino chair on it. So, really, really lovely lady. And she was thinking, animal, you know, and, you know, don't cry, don't be sad. You know, this is animal. Yeah, it was really quite a touching moment. Hadn't previously been seeing apple trees, and there were actually apples growing on them now. We might have been going past them, I suppose, without seeing the fruit. But we've looked pretty closely at most of the trees, so I think it's probably quite new here. That's the back of the Casa Rural where we just stopped. Isn't it a lovely location?
Porque había... Es que no me sale, no sé por qué porque no hay cobertura, no me sale. Entonces no se lo estoy llevando. Pero...
So I think we've just joined up with the main way from Triacastela, the shorter route. I say I think because there is no signal around here, so I can't be entirely sure of our exact location. We have 118 kilometers, 665 meters to go to Sarria. Not to Sarria, to Santiago. I'll get that in the end. And I think the next section is going to be largely along a road. There's a path beside the road. We're wondering whether we'll meet up with some of the people we've got to know who've walked the shorter route. They may have set off a bit later than us. It's now just gone 25 past 2. We've been taking our time, what with not really wanting to cut our Camino short. It feels almost as though as soon as we joined the other route, the whole feel has changed. We've been in this green, secluded little valley all day. And now we have red earth and expanses around us. Different type of farming. We just passed a field of black and white cows, and all of the other cows today have been a sort of tan colour. Well, this albergue, Paloma y Leña, is closed and for sale. 658906816. That is the view from it. San Mamede hammocks hanging up. There are people over there actually, there are cars. People looking around perhaps. I think that's Sarria coming into view, which is very bittersweet for us. Well, I think this is the closest I've got to storks. They look more than ready to fly the nest to me. They've been jostling for space a little as we crossed over the road to get nearer to them. There seem to be little swifts or martins or something, possibly just sparrows. I think they are swifts that live lower down in the nests. Wow! Go on! Go on! I really think that one's going to fledge. It's really trying. Go on, you can do it. Yeah. Welcome to Sarria. And there's a map there. It's 25 to 4 and our train is at 7:10, so we've got some time to kill here now. So we're coming into, well, we are in Sarria, and we aren't in the old part yet, still in the outskirts, but it's immediately obvious that for a large town, everywhere you look, there are things about the Camino. The yellow arrows are big, they're bold, we've passed several hostels about that are advertising things to do with the Camino, a place where you can get your credencial stamped. Everything is Camino. Like this, for example. If the symbols weren't enough, you do have yellow arrows as well. Something you never see in the UK, a built-up place like this with a ploughed field in the middle of it. I think we're about to enter the old part. So these are the escaleras de fonte, which were designed in the 19th century to enable pilgrims to quickly get to the Plaza Mayor, or the main old part of the town. Andrew thinks it's a bit of a joke that they would put in so many stairs. Escaleras mayores, a grand staircase for pilgrims who've walked hundreds of miles. It's sort of the last thing you want. We have spoken to people. For example, there was a pilgrim called Christian from Brazil that we talked to, who had been around the stairs. He'd been around the castle in Ponferrada, and his comment was, yeah, it's big, there are a lot of stairs. I think it's a common feeling among pilgrims. I don't always mind them too much, actually. But they are somewhat taxing. The gentleman at the front there, but with the blue t-shirt on, was just saying, why don't we go around this way to avoid the stairs? Well, there is a castle at the far end of this street. I'm sort of heading there. And that is the lady that we saw in the tiny chapel yesterday.
Etapa etapa resumida como la de los Cebreiro fue peor la de subir a la cumbre, ¿eh? Bueno, me imagino. Lo que pasa es que sin el tiempo mal. Yo te estoy hablando de la etapa y verdad. Que te digo que no, que las 4 etapas.
We are actually quite high up again. The stairs and then that last street are all reasonably steep. I don't think we were the only ones to take selfies by the Sarria sign. Although they're going to the fountain too. No, I was right, we weren't the only ones. So we're in a restaurant having our main meal. It's called Mison o Tapas, and we had a starter of Galician soup again, which is the same as what we had earlier. And I've got chicken with chips, and Andrew has, what is it? It's pork. And we have a salad. It's a nice spot here. It's sort of toward the top of the hill, and then there's a courtyard area just before you get to the castle. So this is one of the key places in Sarria that people tend to photograph. It's a viewpoint. It's called the Mirador do Cárcere. And if we look out here, you can see pretty much the whole town. Not the part where we were just eating, and the church and the castle, that's behind me. And the Camino actually continues sort of to the left of here. Well, this yellow building here, La Casona de Sarria, La Casona rather, is where I had originally booked rooms for us when we were intending to spend the night in Sarria. And then in the end we decided it was best to get the train straight to Orense. But this is where we would have been. I have to say it's strange because you come out of the old part, and on this side, which isn't on the Camino route, it's quite sad for us in a way because we're not on the Camino route now. It's quite different. You're not seeing Camino things all the way along. I had thought that this would be the main sort of street, just looking on Google Maps, but it isn't really. Nice little chapel. Well, we're waiting for our train, but there are no trains. It's a replacement bus, which I do remember reading. So we've been told variously that we need to wait down the road and that we need to wait here. It seems most sensible to wait by the train station, which is just there. So that's what we're doing. And we're in a little seating area. Andrew's just sorting through his things there, getting ready for the bus of the Hotel Roma. So it's strange to be ending the Camino now, particularly having been in Sarria, talking to people. We were just talking to a lady from Iceland who's here with a group of friends, and they're just about to start here. She's feeling totally unprepared. She doesn't like the heat because she's from Iceland. She does lots of hiking in the snow. And people who I suppose you know, they're just walking for 5 days and they have no idea how things work here. And it's strange because we feel so much a part of it, you know, and a source of information in a way about how it works here. And it feels like we've been here for so long. And yet, on the way into Sarria, we were both saying that in some ways we feel as though we've finished. And I think because we're at Sarria, last time, because we did a section to Belorado, that didn't feel as though it was remotely finished. Now I think for us, the knowledge that people say this next section from Sarria to Santiago is very, very busy. It's like a procession of people. It's a very different thing. That's sort of in a way not the thing that most appealed to us with doing the Camino. For us it was more meditative, more time within nature, time with the culture and the people of Spain, and not really being part of a procession. So in a way I think we're feeling, sorry, Andrew is feeling, I think, quite nervous because we've got 10 minutes until the boss comes and I can see he's looking around.
We're not absolutely convinced it's a bus.
Yeah, he's not convinced it's not actually going to be a train or something. It's not been ideal in a way, trying to figure out what to do about the fact that the train station is shut and there's just a sign on the door which says from May there are no trains, but we have tickets, and every bit, you know, I've asked people, it's all okay. But I sort of want to do the Via de la Plata, and we were talking about this strange idea of what if we just get to the 100-kilometer point to Sarria or thereabouts and then start walking again on a different route. Maybe we don't actually want to get to Santiago at all. Maybe we just want to keep not reaching the end. Yeah, we were thinking about Simon Armitage and his Pennine Way book, and he never actually finished the Pennine Way for various reasons, and I think felt similarly. I think because the Camino de Santiago is a religious pilgrimage, although people do it for other reasons as well. I don't know, we sort of have to do what's right for us. Do we absolutely want to finish it by walking from Sarria? I need to look into it, I think. I quite like the idea of starting from somewhere else like Seville, and just walking that route and see if I feel kind of ready to go to Santiago again for that. But on the other hand, if I were able to stay here now and walk an extra 4 days, I've been worried for 4 days. It's quite frustrating that we can't just finish the thing now. And if somebody suddenly said to me, okay, you can't, I would. I'd probably walk to Finisterre, because you'd want to finish there. Sorry, terrible joke, but you have to make light of things, don't you? We'd probably do that. But that would be another chunk of time when we could be doing the Via de la Plata, or one of the others at least. I wish we were finishing it, but we've had 3.5 weeks of just the most fantastic walking, and I don't want it to end really. And now I need to think about writing about it, because that's what I do, I write. So yeah, I'll be processing it all and being stationary and writing.